We can go and get started, Bill, if you'd like.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, Bill is our co-chair for the KSPAN Transportation Safety Committee. He's also the executive director for the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety. So, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Okay. We talk about different subjects on highway safety every quarter. I try to talk about something different every time. This time, we're going to talk a little more general. We started off this year, it was we had mixed results. We were under the previous year's fatality totals early on, but our pedestrian safety numbers were ridiculous. And so we recognized that in late January, early February. And so we got a task force together to try to address that problem. But as we got into summer, we drew about even with 2022. In late summer, we were over 40. We were 40 fatalities over previous year to date. And so since then, over the last 8 weeks, the fatality rate has slowed down, and I believe right now is, where's the, does clicker work? Is that? Yeah.
I just hit the enter key.
The enter key? Okay. All right. So has anybody seen this dashboard? Okay. You all get it every day? Okay. If you don't, email me at bill.bell@ky.gov and I'll get you on the mailing list. We used to have a PDF, a static fatality spreadsheet or report, and we still send that out, but there's a link on that email, and this is what you get when you click on the link. So this is an interactive dashboard. This is a snapshot of this, and this was from yesterday. And so yesterday we were 17 over the previous year. And so what I do is my background, I've got an accounting degree. I try to look at these numbers and see, first of all, they're more than, these are people, as we have here. People, these aren't numbers, but you look, these numbers do represent people that have either been seriously injured or have died in crashes. So you look at these statistics, non-motorized users, that's what I mentioned earlier, pedestrians and bicyclists, that's your non-motorized users. So as of yesterday, we were one under. I think today we're even. And so we have motorcyclists broken out in two different categories. Commercial vehicle involvement. We've got age range, year-to-date comparisons. And so this is pretty interesting because if you look at 18 to 20, 21 to 24, you've got a difference of 16 and then a difference of 6 in those two. So that makes up your difference, your overall difference right there, just in your young drivers. And so 25 to 34, it's also a pretty good difference. So I have a theory about that. For about 2 years, we were not able to go into high schools and do our regular programs. The people that contract with our office weren't able to do that either. So we missed a lot of opportunities to reach juniors and seniors for those 2 years. And so that's, look at your 18 to 20, 21 to 24. That's a big difference there. And we're seeing that across the nation as well. And so I don't know if I can open this, but this is a live version. And so if you go on into this, click on the link when you get the email, you can click on any of these numbers. And so if you look at the bottom, you also have different categories, alcohol involvement. So looks like the number so far is 17.12% of alcohol involved in crashes, which is a little bit higher than we're used to seeing. Non-motorized, which you mentioned pedestrian safety earlier. You look at, this doesn't break it out between pedestrian and bicycle. The static report does break it out. And so most of these crashes, these fatalities, are pedestrians. And so you look at, this is a little deceiving because we had 109 last year for the whole year. Right now we're 85 year to date. And so you look at the hours, this is telling. You see that midnight to 6 a.m., 23. You got 6 p.m. to midnight, 39. That represents what, 73% of all pedestrian bicycle fatalities. So what, I'd say most people in this room, if not all, you're involved in education. And so that's one of the E's for highway safety. You have engineering, education, enforcement, and emergency services. So we have an education branch, and we do a lot of school events. We do community events. The events we have coming up are called Paint the Plow, where students at schools can paint a snow plow. And so when they do that, we're having like a rollover event there or some other highway safety educational event. We're also contracting with several organizations. Alliance Sports Marketing is our new one. They're doing several events, probably I'd say 2 or 3 dozen events. Grantees like SAD, Carol will be up later. KSP, they do a lot of rollover events for us. And so we're getting to the point where our office can't do a lot of these events. We can't do a majority of them. So we're trying to contract, partner with all these entities and have an exponential effect. Areas of improvement, seatbelt usage. Right now, we're about 52% of unbelted fatalities. We want that number to be as low as possible. That'll drive our numbers down. And so I think last year was 54%. I'll tell you. So at the end of last year, we're at 56%. Now we're at 52%. We do an annual seatbelt survey, which was just completed and certified by NHTSA, and it was, I think, 89.6. The threshold for NHTSA, you want to be over 90%. So that percentage increased 3% since 2022, which is a good thing. So we just need to get over the hump, that 90%. So what NHTSA does, when you get over 90% seatbelt usage observed, you can flex some of that money that they send our way, and we can be a little more creative with those funds. Drug driving. This is going to be, we mentioned gummies and all those other things that the green community wants us to embrace. It's going to be an issue. It's going to, whether we want to admit it or not, and I don't want to get political here, but it's going to be a problem. And we have an opportunity in this state, and NHTSA funded, to do a roadside survey. And so this roadside survey will use oral testing. And so it'll be completely volunteer. NHTSA does it every 10 years. And so they've been doing it for the last 5 decades, I believe. And so anytime you see a stat quoted, like this many drivers are impaired, this many drivers are on alcohol, this many, they're quoting one of these roadside surveys. And the way it works, you have a tent set up or an area set up off the road. You have signs saying $20 for 10 minutes or whatever they're willing to pay. And so you basically, if you're a driver and you say, okay, I can make $20 for 5-10 minutes and all I have to do is answer questions. Okay, great. So you pull off, you do this, you answer the questions, and they say, okay, for an extra $10, would you do this oral fluid test? Okay, sure. And we did a training behind the transportation cabinet, and we ran probably 10 people through this. And these are folks that have been doing these roadside surveys for probably 2 decades, or they've had substantial training. And it is very benign, very easy. And they say their experience is that a lot of people, whether they're impaired or not, they will go through and get that quick $20, $30. And there's a lot of questions that follow this. And I can imagine the questions that are going through your head, and we've asked them all. And so, but yes, there are definitely precautions that are taken, especially if somebody is impaired to a point where they don't need to be driving. They don't drive from that site, period. Whether we have to pay for them to get a ride home, tow their vehicle home, or stay in a hotel, they will not drive from that site. But anyway, the idea is a NHTSA-funded roadside survey, pre-legalization, and then a year later, post-legalization. And we want to see the difference. And we want the legislature to see that difference as well. VRU safety. So that's vulnerable road users. And so that's what I mentioned earlier about, the spike that we had early this year. So in March, we got with Louisville Metro, and we started a ad hoc group, a task force. And so we've been looking at the systematic approach of looking at every crash, every pedestrian injury and fatality in Louisville. We've been to almost every site and looked at that stretch of road, whether it be 2 blocks or 5 blocks, and seeing what we can do from an engineering perspective, and then what kind of behavioral items were involved or issues were involved. A lot of times it's at night. A lot of times there was dark clothing worn, and a lot of times there's impairment, whether by the driver or the pedestrian. But there's also things we can do, like striping, lighting, bus stops that are mid-block. And it's, that's a separate challenge, but, and there's other, it was a learning experience for me because I'm not an engineer. And so when they start talking about all these things, like, wow, that makes sense. So, but it's a different way of thinking for engineers as well. in a different way to start designing streets, which is a whole nother presentation that Keith Lovin can provide. Post-crash care. We will probably be having a grant with Louisville on post-crash care. I know we have one with K-beams, but I believe the one with Louisville is going to be a little more detailed. And so that's also through NHTSA. Younger drivers, as I mentioned earlier on the fatality crash report, younger drivers, that's going to be our future of highway safety. That's how we make a generational change, cultural change in driving safety. I just heard a report this morning, and they were talking about the different factors of fatalities, and of course, transportation safety is right up there, probably 2 or 3. When I saw the drug fatalities, it looks like they've overtaken crashes. And so this is something I had last time, and so and I think over the last 8 weeks, we have built some momentum in a good way. And so we're going to be doing educational programs longer than we usually do, just because we have the contractors to help us. And so we'll be getting into more community events, more schools until probably December, which usually we cut it off at the end of October. But as long as the weather holds out, we're going to be doing it. So we've talked to folks from Vision Zero in Louisville, of course, KSPAN, other community groups. We've done some, I think we'll be doing one in Bardstown Road. They're going to have 15,000 people there. We had our contractor at the Louisville Notre Dame game right before the game, probably an hour before the game. They had a record crowd there. I don't know if there's any Louisville fans here, but it's a fantastic game. So also mentioning schools, North Oldham High School, as well as several high schools in Louisville, will be getting some new turn lanes or new reflective beacons, crosswalks. And so we're going to piggyback on those events, such as the one in Oldham County, and provide education and enforcement. Oldham County is a little different. They will not allow any staff to work crossings. And so Jefferson County will. And so what we've offered is to have the sheriff's office work an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, and do that for however long we need them, 3 or 4 weeks, until the kids realize that that's the only place to cross. And this happens in other places, I'm sure, but I live close to there, drove by there. Kids are crossing in 10 different places on the roadway, and it's horrifying. I went in and talked to them about it. They're like, well, we can't do anything about it. I'm like, okay, well then we will. So, but anyway, let's see. Oh, this happens to be Pedestrian Safety Month. And so has anyone seen any spots on TV? The guy standing in the middle of the road? So he was on a green screen, by the way. So we did get some mail on that. And so they're like, why would you talk about highway safety with a guy in the middle of the street? I was like, well, he's not in the middle of the street, really. I mean, we had a camera in the middle of the street. but that's the digital footprint. So YouTube, other social media, of course, your TV, radio. So we should have saturated that with those spots. We're also on WHAS. We were just on there on Thursday. We had the chief district engineer from District 5 here in Louisville. We're talking about road safety assessments, which was very riveting for that crew. And so they can be a little distracting, by the way, on WHAS. But we held it together, and I think we got our message out. Dwight Witten said, "Why can't we have Shelby Road 18 lanes?" No, we can't do that. We're shrinking. We're shrinking. It's called road diets. So I don't know if anybody's noticed in Louisville where Lexington Road, parts of that went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. Bardstown Road went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and it's so that everyone can use their roadway safely. And I was on Lexington Road last week, same area. There's no congestion there. So it's a safer way for people to get around. Strategic Highway Safety Plan. I have a link here to the existing one. UK is already working on the next one, which will come out next year. And so we have several task force for each emphasis area. Motorcycles were in the vulnerable road user group. We're going to break out motorcycles because they're motorized. It's a motorized vehicle. So that typically is for non-motorized. Most states just have bike ped in the vulnerable road user group. And that's all I had. Does anybody have any questions?
Can we leave electric bikes in bicycles, or do they get the electric bicycles? Are they going to stay in the bicycle category?
Right now, the data for any of those is under pedestrian. So those go under the non-motorist. Yeah.
So any movement on potentially strengthening these GDLs? So because obviously they can have their learner's permit at 16, but they only have the intermediate license for half a year. Mm-hmm. There's other states that have required it to be for a full year in terms of permit, to give them the full year to practice in all seasons of driving, especially in states that have snow and ice. I know that there's pushback potentially from constituents on that, but I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see mandatory driver training. We'll have Ford. We just found this out back in August or September. We met with Ford Foundation, so they'll be having an advanced driver training in Louisville every year due to our presence. You were there.
I was in June. It's incredible.
Yeah. So, and it's not the same as having the old drivers training that they had in schools. Schools cut that, I guess, due to budget concerns. But we'll have that. I know we have this outfit called Brakes, BRAKES, but it's an acronym. But it's advanced driver training. And the thing about, it's experience is probably one of the main issues why younger drivers crash. And especially new drivers that are male. My son wants a muscle car. He's not getting one. He's going to have a 2002 Lexus that's sitting in the driveway.
He just gets his picture taken with one, and that's it.
Yeah, he thinks he's getting one. No. Like, you're the last person that should be driving a muscle car. But it is amazing having kids. I've got 4 kids. My daughters are good drivers. They're pretty responsible. But I fear next year for my son driving. But yes, it'd be great to have that. I don't see the legislature touching that, to be honest. We'll have a hands-free bill probably coming up. We're going to have automated enforcement probably coming up. And I can't really push it until they actually are filed, and they're holding all the bills right now. So they're not pre-filing anything. So we're guessing on that.
I'm with the Kentucky Trauma Advisory Committee, and in addition to that, I understand that the AAA is going to be doing something with slow down, move over in the 24 session. We're looking at, I've got a draft of a bill here, I'll be glad to give to you, dealing with a super speeder bill. We tried it last year, didn't get out of committee, we didn't put it in time. But the idea is to develop not only a source of funding to help enhance and grow our trauma system, but also to help with EMS response, to help with education and so forth. So we've got a program in here, and just the super speeder bill, we did ours a little less than Georgia. Georgia does $200, 200 miles, it's 20 miles an hour over the posted speed limit on interstate highways, and they do $200. We're gonna do ours at 100. But the KSP has given us some data. There were over 48,000 citations in Kentucky last year. People doing over 20 miles an hour on interstates, on parkways, on a number of highways and so forth. We're gonna do $100 surcharge on that, create a fund, and help us to build and grow our trauma system, and to help us with our EMS folks. EMS is struggling to survive right now. They can't find and recruit enough people and retain them. When a kid can make more money working in a fast food joint than he can work on an ambulance, we got a problem. Yeah, we got a whole program to try to address that. So we'll see that. We'll be there with you.
Yeah, and NHTSA recognizes that, and so they have a post-crash care grant or grant opportunities. So yeah, we'll probably need to talk about that. But yeah, I've spoken with some officers from Louisville Metro, and on the Watterson, they could pull people over all day, every day, but they focus on the ones that are going 80, 85, 90, or else they'd pull half the people over. So it is a problem. It's a big problem. And so and I think some of that was born out of COVID, because if anyone was on the road in 2020, like April, May, when officers couldn't make any contact with drivers, it was like the Autobahn. The Gene Snyder was the Louisville Autobahn. So
Fewer cars on the road too.
oh, it was scary. I mean, I almost got run over a couple times.
Part of the other challenge with the inexperienced drivers is not just the 16 and 17-year-olds, which the GDL addresses, but it's all those people now that are waiting until after they turn 18 to get their license with zero instruction. So that's part of the challenge too in the education piece, is you've got a lot of young drivers, youthful drivers under the age of 25 who never had any instruction because they waited till after age 18.
I had a question and a question comment. What kind of automated enforcement options are there that you're talking about that about legislation?
Well, as you can imagine, there's a supermajority in the legislature, and we can't do a blanket. I mean, that's out of the question. And so we've met with the Joint Committee, Transportation, and we want to focus on work zones. I'd like to also bring in school zones, but for the last 3 years, I think it's been work zones only. So automated enforcement in work zones. And so it would be a civil fine.
So they do like radars up the.
Yep. And plate readers, and they'd get an invoice.
The other comment question was, for the people waiting until after 18 to get their license, has anyone looked at the impact of regionalizing the drivers' testing centers? Because like in rural communities, that makes it really difficult to get your else. Now, you gotta go quite a ways away to go take a test and do all that kind of stuff.
It's a general issue across the country. They refer to those as driver training deserts, right? Where either they can't get the instruction or they have to go far to do the exam. Both of those things are an issue. So I know that's something that NHTSA is looking at as well. Yeah, it's a challenge.
I would say, so I sit on the TRB committee for licensing, education, and training, and that is something that we have discussed in our mid-year meeting as well as area deprivation in relation to driver training. So it's one thing to increase the strengths of the policy, but then the turnaround is then face bigger inequities for those who can't access.
Sounds like she needs to be on the transportation committee. Transportation committee. Just a quick note, I'm not presenting today. Carol Lucio was sad if you've never met me before. These materials that were up on the table are for you to take. You may take them in droves if you like. I would rather not go home with those boxes that are out there. I have thousands of them, no lie, thousands. Bill and his team paid for these to have these. I don't have thousands. These I have thousands of. The GDL postcards, great to make sure drivers, ed schools, schools hand these out with parking permits. That can be a conversation starting for next school year. And then this is the digital version for this hard copy passport to safe driving. If you want to learn more about these, see me after the meeting, but I just wanted to touch on, these are up there. And we do welcome other people who would be interested in being part of the transportation committee and helping to guide some of our efforts going forward.
All right, anybody else?
Other questions? Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.